It's not even her dog. It's my dog! She's taking my dog!
By mid-morning on December 7, 1941, 22-year-old Airman First Class Shigenori Nishikaichi found himself in a precarious situation. His Mitsubishi A6 M20 fighter was in serious distress. As part of an escort mission for a group of bombers launched from the Japanese aircraft carrier Shokaku Nishikaichi, and 7 fellow pilots from the carrier Hiryu engaged targets in southeastern Oahu. They strafed the U.S. Naval Air Station at Mokapu Peninsula and subsequently attacked Bellows Army Airfield, located 10 miles to the south, where bombing followed their initial assaults. After completing their raids, the Zeros regrouped to head back toward the carriers, aiming to meet up with returning bombers just north of Oahu's northern tip. This was crucial as the fighters had limited navigational support for the journey back to their vessels nearly 200 miles away. However, before reaching the rendezvous point, they were ambushed by 9 American Curtiss P-36A fighters, leading to a lopsided confrontation. Despite their fierce appearance, the inadequately armed P-36s were outmatched. The Zeros outclimbed, outmaneuvered, and outran the less agile Curtiss planes, leading to the swift downfall of several American pilots. While in the thick of battle, Nishikaichi's Zero suffered some damage, which initially seemed insignificant. However, he soon noticed a troubling increase in fuel consumption. One of the numerous hits on his aircraft had punctured the gas tank. The engine began to sputter, causing him to lag behind the other Zeros. When he finally reached the rendezvous area, he found himself alone, only to spot another Zero approaching, this one ominously spewing smoke. During the morning briefing on Hiryu, pilots had been instructed to attempt emergency landings on Niihau, the westernmost of Hawaii's 7 main islands, if their aircraft were crippled. There, they were assured they would be able to wait for an Imperial Navy I-class submarine on a rescue mission, and there would be no hostilities from locals, as Niihau was believed to be uninhabited. Considering his rapid fuel depletion and declining performance of his engine, Nishikaichi rationalized that attempting to reach Niihau, roughly 130 miles to the west, was a more realistic option than heading back to Hiryu, which was likely retreating toward Japan. With the damaged Zero trailing behind him, he pivoted westward. 20 minutes later, the injured Zeros passed just south of Kauai's lush hills. Nishikaichi soon spotted the imposing lava cliffs along Niihau's eastern coastline. As they circled the island, he realized that contrary to what he had been told, Niihau was occupied. A large central building accompanied by several smaller structures was situated about a third of the way up the west coast. Beyond that, he noticed a small settlement teeming with people in front of what resembled a church. From his low altitude, he discerned that they appeared to be Polynesian natives. In a moment of uncertainty, Nishikaichi initially flew southwest away from the island, with the other damaged Zero following suit. Yet the reality of his situation quickly set in. He had to either land on Niihau or face the ocean's depths. Realigning himself with the other aircraft, he gestured for its pilot to head back to the island. Airman Second Class Saburo Ishii, the other pilot, dismissed the suggestion. He had just relayed to his carrier Shokaku his intention to return to Oahu and crash onto a more desirable target. Moments later, Nishikaichi watched in disbelief as Ishii climbed steeply, only to plunge directly into the sea. As the shaken Japanese pilot turned back toward Niihau, he was struck by the realization that the island's inhabitants had been better prepared for conflict than the military on Oahu. The manager of Niihau had evidently ensured that potential landing sites were either heavily plowed or obstructed by piles of rocks. Running low on fuel, Nishikaichi finally discovered a reasonably level stretch of pasture near a secluded house. He glided his Zero into a shallow descent, bracing himself for an abrupt landing. Little did he know that the island he was about to touch down on was strictly kapu, or forbidden to outsiders. In 1864, King Kamehameha V had sold Niihau to the Robinson family, who managed the island alongside the fiercely independent native Niihauans. Even as of 1959, Niihau remained the sole island out of Hawaii's 240 precincts to vote against statehood. The dominant native Hawaiian population here engaged in herding sheep and cattle, gathering honey, and became famous for crafting exquisite jewelry from small shells collected along the island's shores. Known as the Forbidden Island, Niihau boasted a notably arid climate due to rain being blocked by Kauai's towering mountains, situated 17 miles away across the Kalakahi Channel. As Nishikaichi geared up for landing in this unwelcoming territory, his Zero's wheels collided with a wire fence, causing the plane to nosedive violently. His safety harness malfunctioned, hurling him against the instrument panel. Native Hawaiian Howard Kaleohano witnessed the striking arrival of the Zero from his front yard. Born and educated on the Big Island, he had been granted permission by island manager Aylmer Robinson to visit his sister on Niihau in 1930. He chose to stay and eventually married, becoming one of the few native Hawaiians fluent in English. Kaleohano rushed to the wreckage, pulling the dazed pilot free and confiscating his sidearm and official documents. In broken English, Nishikaichi questioned whether Kaleohano was Japanese, to which he replied, "I am Hawaiian." He then led the pilot to his home, where his wife provided breakfast. As it became evident that Nishikaichi's limited English would not suffice, a Japanese-born beekeeper named Ishimatsu Shintani was summoned for assistance. However, the 60-year-old Shintani was not pleased to be asked to interpret for the pilot. Having lived in Hawaii for over 4 decades, he faced the heavy burden of being barred from U.S. citizenship due to existing laws, even as his children were born American citizens. Shintani's hesitation grew, and after a brief exchange with Nishikaichi, he left without passing on much pertinent information to Kaleohano. Understanding the urgency of the situation, Kaleohano sought further help. The Haradas were called in next. They could speak both Japanese and English. Yoshio Harada, born in Kauai in 1903 to Japanese parents, was an American citizen, but he carried concerns over his ties to Japan, especially since his wife Irene also hailed from Japanese descent. Speaking Japanese, Nishikaichi conveyed the attack details to the Haradas, insisting on reclaiming his firearm and documents. However, the Haradas chose to keep Nishikaichi's revelations to themselves, aware that the local Niihauans viewed them as more aligned with Japan than Hawaii, a decision that would soon have grave implications. Blissfully unaware that war had officially been declared between the United States and Japan, the Niihauans organized a luau in honor of their unexpected guest. During the celebration, Nishikaichi even performed a Japanese song, strumming along on a borrowed guitar, likely pondering when the rescue submarine would arrive to take him back to safety. However, unbeknownst to him, the submarine that had been in the vicinity was ordered to head toward Oahu to intercept any American rescue efforts. As daylight faded, news of the Pearl Harbor attack and assaults on other military installations on Oahu reached Niihau via radio, prompting a fresh interrogation of the Japanese pilot. Yoshio Harada realized the need to accurately relay what Nishikaichi had divulged, setting the stage for an intense moral dilemma ahead, one that would entangle individuals and impact the nation significantly. The dilemma that now arose was how to handle the enemy pilot. Aylmer Robinson, the absentee landlord of Niihau, resided on Kauai and routinely visited Niihau to manage family affairs. Following the death of the island's previous superintendent, John Rennie, in September, Robinson appointed Harada as the new paymaster in Rennie's stead. This newfound responsibility elevated Harada's status on Niihau, placing him at a crossroads between his American citizenship and Japanese heritage. As the Niihauans deliberated over their approach to the unwelcome intruder, Nishikaichi was spending the night at the home of luau host John Kelly, accompanied by the Haradas. The following day, Nishikaichi was transported by tractor to Key Landing, situated at the northern tip of the island. Robinson's boat typically docked there during his inspection visits, and he was expected on December 8th. However, to the Niihauans' surprise, he did not show up. Unknown to them, newly implemented wartime restrictions had halted boat traffic across the 17-mile stretch between the island and Kauai. The wait provided Nishikaichi and Harada with a rare moment of connection on the beach. Sensing Harada's conflicted loyalties, Nishikaichi attempted to exploit them. He suggested that if the wavering defense of Oahu was indicative of American resolve, Japan was destined to triumph in the war. Gradually, he swayed Harada, and to some extent, Harada's wife, Irene. On Thursday, December 11th, even while still being treated as a guest, though not an especially welcomed one, Harada involved the beekeeper Shintani in their plans. The three men held a private discussion at Harada's residence, where Nishikaichi was staying. The following day, Shintani confronted Howard Kaleohano, demanding the documents he had taken from the downed plane. Kaleohano refused, leading to Shintani issuing a threat before being expelled. Realizing the beekeeper could no longer be relied upon, Harada and Nishikaichi were resolute in pursuing the pilot's chosen course of action, death with honor. By then, the pilot was under loose supervision by several Nihawans. That same day, Harada had pilfered a shotgun and a pistol from the abandoned structure near the crash site, the locked Robinson Ranch house for which he had a key. After loading the firearms, he transported them to a warehouse that stored honey from the island's successful beekeeping operations. He informed his wife and the pilot about the secured weapons. At that moment, only one of the 4 assigned guards was present. When Nishikaichi requested to use the Harada's outdoor restroom, Harada accompanied him outside, followed closely by the guard. Robinson's boat typically docked there during his inspection visits, and he was expected on December 8th. However, to the Nihawans' surprise, he did not show up. Unknown to them, newly implemented wartime restrictions had halted boat traffic across the 17-mile stretch between the island and Kauai. The wait provided Nishikaichi and Harada with a rare moment of connection on the beach. Sensing Harada's conflicted loyalties, Nishikaichi attempted to exploit them. He suggested that if the wavering defense of Oahu was indicative of American resolve, Japan was destined to triumph in the war. Gradually, he swayed Harada, and to some extent, Harada's wife, Irene. On Thursday, December 11th, even while still being treated as a guest, though not an especially welcomed one, Harada involved the beekeeper Shintani in their plans. The 3 men held a private discussion at Harada's residence, where Nishikaichi was staying. The following day, Shintani confronted Howard Kaleohano, demanding the documents he had taken from the downed plane. Kaleohano refused, leading to Shintani issuing a threat before being expelled. Realizing the beekeeper could no longer be relied upon, Harada and Nishikaichi were resolute in pursuing the pilot's chosen course of action, death with honor. By then, the pilot was under loose supervision by several Nihawans. That same day, Harada had pilfered a shotgun and a pistol from the abandoned structure near the crash site, the locked Robinson Ranch house for which he had a key. After loading the firearms, he transported them to a warehouse that stored honey from the island's successful beekeeping operations. He informed his wife and the pilot about the secured weapons. At that moment, only one of the 4 assigned guards was present. When Nishikaichi requested to use the Harada's outdoor restroom, Harada accompanied him outside, followed closely by the guard. Shortly after midnight, he and 5 companions set out in a lifeboat from Key Landing to Waimea on Kauai, a grueling 10-hour journey against the wind. Robinson, who had caught wind of the signal fire and was growing increasingly frustrated with the travel restrictions, was astonished when Kaleohano called him from Waimea. For days, Robinson had urged the commander of the Kauai Military District to dispatch a boat to Niihau, but the Navy's ban on boat traffic had thwarted his attempts. Now, having been briefed by Kaleohano on the dire situation, Robinson finally got the go-ahead to put a rescue mission into motion. Meanwhile, Nishikaichi and Harada recaptured the escaped guard and compelled him to stroll through the abandoned village, calling for any remaining residents to come out. Only one man, Kahakila Kalima, showed himself, becoming their second prisoner. They returned to the plane, stripped it of the Zero's machine guns and leftover ammunition, and loaded them onto a wagon. They attempted to set the plane ablaze, but the fire in the cockpit failed to spread. Harada sent Kalima to inform Irene that he wouldn't be coming back that night. Then, intoxicated by their newfound power, he and the pilot roamed the now quiet village, discharging their weapons and demanding Kaleohano's surrender. Once freed from his captors, Kalima dashed to the beach, where he found his wife along with Ben Kanahele and his wife. Kanahele, a 49-year-old native Hawaiian sheep rancher standing at 6 feet tall, was known for his immense strength. Together, Kalima and Kanahele skillfully evaded Nishikaichi and Harada, managing to remove the machine gun ammo from the wagon. But when they and their wives tried to return to the village for food, they were apprehended. After dark on December 12th, Nishikaichi and Harada searched Kaleohano's home for the plane's documents, and in a fit of frustration, set it ablaze. They then compelled Ben Kanahele to locate Kaleohano. Knowing that Kaleohano had headed to Kauai, Kanahele pretended to call for him. Now with the shotgun in hand and a pistol tucked in his boot, Nishikaichi warned Kanahele that if he couldn't produce Kaleohano, he and all others on the island would face execution. The typically calm Nihawans, usually slow to anger, had finally reached their limit. Speaking in Hawaiian, Ben Kanahele demanded that Harada take the pilot's pistol away. Harada refused, but indicated to Nishikaichi that he required the shotgun. As the pilot relinquished the gun, Kaneheli and his wife lunged at him, but Nishikaichi was quicker, drawing the pistol from his boot and firing at Kaneheli, hitting him in the chest, hip, and groin. Enraged, Kaneheli hoisted the pilot into the air and hurled him against a nearby stone wall. Kaneheli's wife grabbed a rock and began to strike the downed pilot's head. In a swift move, Kaneheli pulled out a knife and slit Nishikaichi's throat. Realizing he was complicit in this catastrophic turn of events, Harada shoved the shotgun against his own gut and pulled the trigger. When an army rescue team finally reached Kauai the following morning, it seemed as if this incredible tale had come to a close. But little did anyone know, the story was far from over. Ben Kaneheli made a remarkable recovery from his injuries. In August 1945, he was honored with 2 presidential citations, the Medal of Merit and the Purple Heart. Ishimatsu Shintani, who played a minor role in the Nihao incident, was detained and held in internment on the U.S. mainland for the duration of the war. He directed his anger more towards Japan than the United States for his predicament. After the repeal of immigration racial barriers in the post-war period, he proudly became a naturalized American citizen in 1960. Irene Harada faced tremendous loss, grappling with the death of her husband and her own freedom. Accused of being a Japanese spy, she was arrested in Kauai on December 15, 1941, and later moved to a military prison in Oahu. There, she was interrogated but chose to remain silent. Irene was finally released in late 1944, returning to Nihao with a heavy heart and a lasting sense of bitterness. The actions of Shintani and the Haradas, all residents of Nihao with Japanese heritage, were highlighted in a Navy report from January 1942, which expressed concerns that Japanese residents previously deemed loyal to the United States may support Japan. Amidst the outrage following the surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, it is undeniable that the Nihao incident played a crucial role in prompting President Franklin D. Roosevelt's administration to expel over 100,000 individuals of Japanese descent from the West Coast, forcibly relocating them to internment camps in the U.S. interior. In Hashihama, Japan, the hometown of young pilot Shigenori Nishikaichi, a stone column stands in his memory. Engraved in granite are accounts of his actions over Oahu, which attribute his death to battle. Additionally, the inscription boldly proclaims, "His meritorious deed will live forever." The Nihao incident was inspiration for the 2019 film The Enemy Within, which received an incredible amount of backlash for its historical inaccuracies and accusations of whitewashing from Hawaiian and Japanese American celebrities. Thanks for watching. If you have an opinion on his story, drop a comment below. If you enjoy the content, consider giving the video a like and a subscription to the channel.